one of those interviews where the only thing that's civilized about me is from the middle up, and because the rest is
I know,
all
I'm like that all the time.
I'm in my Bakomo pajamas that my mother-in-law brought for me
I love it.
from South Africa when she came to visit.
Nice. I'm
Um,
so sorry. We're actually in the middle of moving. So this morning I took down my entire office and all that's left is the fridge and the light strip on the floor. So that's why this looks the way it does.
it looks incredible. It looks fine. I mean, yeah. So I just had an interview in my room with the most interesting guy.
Okay.
Wow. I don't know. Have you ever heard of FK and Army?
No.
They're very big in South Africa. He does, yeah, it's like a charity, non-profit business. But wow, what an interesting guy. Anyway, that's not the topic, is it? So,
No.
tech girl, come on. Now, first of all, thank you so much for making time for an interview. This is unlike any interview that I've done, honestly. I've spoken to people that just moved abroad. I've spoken to comedians. I've spoken to singers and rugby players, but never a gamer or presenter of games, if you will. Myself, I'm a big Counter-Strike fan. Now, I can go on and on just to tell you that I was very good at one stage. I probably wasn't that good. Please
Fair enough.
take a few minutes, introduce yourself, because trust me, the Ursia audience probably don't know you as well as I do.
So basically, I go my name on the internet, if you like, is Tech Girl ZA, which was a terrible choice made many years ago as a very young person. But I am a full-time commentator of Counter-Strike, which is basically competitive gamers travel around the world and they compete in these massive tournaments in big stadiums, and I get to tell their stories either via commentating, or the thing that I specialize in is desk hosting. And the easiest way for me to explain what a desk host is especially for expats from South Africa will know it. CD, who does all the rugby, she's the lady that is the voice. She introduces you to the show. She interviews the experts. I do that, but for Counter Strike, which is a FPS game, and I get to travel the world doing that, which is pretty sick.
Oh, you just came back from Wimbledon.
Yeah, so that wasn't even Counter Strike. That was for a clients of mine that I do a lot of Counter Strike with. They were asked by Wimbledon and American Express to run the first ever Wimbledon eChamps,
Hmm.
which was an online tennis tournament. There's a game called Topspin 2K25, and they did this global qualifier online, and then they took all the finalists and flew them to Wimbledon itself, and they didn't get to play on center court, but they got to play right next door to center court. So if you ever watch Wimbledon, the
Yeah.
the spot where all the media stands, so like Sky News and stuff, and you've got center court in the background, they actually played there. And they did the finals at Wimbledon, and they invited me to go commentate that because they were just looking for people that were well known in esports who could kind of cross over. So normally I would say no because I am very like CS focused, but I was like, this is such a cool opportunity to go to Wimbledon, and I said yes, and
Yeah.
it was rad. Like I got to see Wimbledon. We got to go to center court. We got to have that like iconic moment. They even had the gent who engraves the Wimbledon trophy was there to engrave a gold plated PlayStation for the winner. So it was just like
Gold,
the most insane experience.
gold-plated places. Where is my? I've got a place. It's in the other room. It's no longer
In the
my
other
place.
room.
It belongs to my kids. If anyone asks, I don't play anymore. Yeah,
That's
that
how
is
it goes. But yeah, the gold plated one, yeah, you're never gonna play on that, right? It was so heavy as well. I was like, this is not something to play on. This is something you put in a cabinet somewhere and just leave.
well. I can imagine that cooling will not be a problem as a techie myself because I computers. Yeah, because the my PlayStation has been crashing lately, but I think it's got like a build-up of dust on the inside. But there, my ADHD is kicking in, and I'm totally going off course. I've been in Wimbledon, not in the stadium, unfortunately. I went because I lived in London for a while, and we were helping friends of us move from Wimbledon to somewhere else. I can't even remember where. But yes, interesting. The UK, I would say it's an amazing place to visit. And Christmas in the UK is spectacular. Living there, it's something different, something completely different. Now, before I get into a few topics that I've prepared for us, Counter-Strike. Now, do you play as well? Obviously, but are you good? Are you like
No, no, not at all. Those who can't play commentate. No, I'm not very good. I've actually never been. So it's kind of funny because I got into games at a very young age with my brother. My brother is the guy that you can put any game in front of him. It takes him a few minutes. He'll kind of like figure it out, and then off he goes, and he just demolishes. And he just naturally picks it up. I'm one of those people and I actually think I'm the majority where it takes me a lot of time to like get into the mechanics and to get an understanding of what's needed of me and things like that. So I'm not good in competitive situations because it does take me a little bit of time and I'm a little bit all over the place. So I was never good at games, and I've never professed to be good at games, but I love them. And I think one of the things that I thought was when I got into like talking about games and competitive gaming was I think the majority of people are like me. Like we play and it's fun, but I mean, a lot of people think they're good, but most people aren't actually that good, and it takes us a bit of time. So I do play. I'm not very good, but I love it. And I love watching the pros play because I think it also just shows you the level that you could play at if you put in the time.
Just to touch a bit on that topic now, I've been playing Counter-Strike since 1.6. And I remember walking into this mate's house of mine in South African Strand, and he was busy playing it on this massive computer, CRT screen and everything. I'm like, what's that? And he tried to explain to me his Counter-Strike, but I absolutely was amazed by it. And as soon as I had the tools to do it, I was playing myself. And I think I've got my 10-year badge, but I've got like a 15-year badge. I don't think they make a 15-year badge, but it's something equivalent to it that I've got. That's how long I've been playing, and obviously now on CSGO. But I remember it was like 2 or 3 times a week. I would sit at I was a bachelor. I would sit at my desk, bottle of red wine, a pack of this cheap cherry cigars, and until the early hours of the morning, I would play until there was no one left to join the service anymore, which was so frustrating because I wasn't done yet. But I got sort of recruited by this clan, if you will, and they called themselves the Assassins. And we had to like each have the same profile pic, which was like the sick, really great profile photo. And I felt so good. Even people asking me to join their clan, you wouldn't believe how many matches we won. 0.
That's the best part. Oh, you won 0, but it doesn't matter how much fun. Like, this is my thing. How much fun was it being part of that clan and feeling like you were part of this like team and you all had the same goal, and you lost and that sucks, but there is something fun about the teamwork that comes with it, right?
Yeah, no, it was fun, and it was amusing how we practiced a few times a week, but they took it so seriously, and they would be like, "Yeah, you need to throw the grenade there and the flashbang there because they normally rush from this end and that end," and then suddenly the one guy, you can hear his wife arguing with him in the background. He's like, "Pieter, ons vriende is hier, jy moet braai. Jy moet die vuur aansteek." And then we would all burst out laughing because he's not even supposed to. And he would
playing.
be happy.
I love that.
No, it was loads of fun. Right. I don't want to take up too much of your time. There are a few interesting topics that I thought was worth discussing. I've mailed them through to you, and I was hoping to bring them up. Are you okay with the few topics that I've sent through?
Everything you've sent, I'm more than comfortable with, and even if you went off topic, I probably would be fine with that conversation as well.
Oh, we're way off topic. You're the pro. I'm just doing this for fun. Right. First topic: evolution of esports in South Africa and beyond. So basically, esports wasn't that a big thing until, say, how many years back, and how did that change the way that the younger people approach gaming in general?
So it's a bit of a complex question because esports in Europe and I would say Asia and America is way ahead of where South Africa is. Even sort of Australia, I think, is probably like 2-3 years ahead of where South Africa currently sits. Australia quite far behind, but Europe and the States, well, North and South America, 5-6 years ahead. So they fill out an entire stadium when they do a Counter-Strike event, right? Or a League of Legends event. So the same as a rugby stadium, it's completely sold out with people coming to watch, and people will sit there for 6, 7, 8 hours to watch these guys play. And that's not including what's happening online. So esports is obviously live streamed normally to a Twitch or a YouTube. So it's free to watch most of the time. And you've got millions of people tuning in to watch all around the world, and then people coming to the stadiums. South Africa doesn't have that at all. So when I first got into esports, there was, especially in South Africa, it was never really a job. It wasn't even a consideration of a way to have a job. It was just that my brother was playing with his friends, and I wanted to support them, and I wanted to showcase them a little bit and create content around it. But there was nowhere in my mind did I see the stadiums, which was what was happening in the rest of the world. In the last few years, specifically, I would say COVID did a lot to kind of push South African esports forward because everyone was online. So we saw a lot of traditional sports stars starting to play games. Everyone got a little bit more focused on it. But even now, South African esports is way behind. And I think there's a bunch of reasons we can talk about. Like there's obviously access to data, the cost of data, the socioeconomic factors are pretty huge locally. And then it's the fact that South Africa is just so far away from the rest of the world. So it's impossible for any gamers, and you'll know playing, you've got to play on local servers. You can't really play someone overseas because the ping is massive, and that creates a problem. And then again, a very small percentage of South Africans can play a lot of the competitive games. So you have this like very limited player base. You don't get better. So South Africa's always been quite behind. I think that it's improving slowly but surely. But I do think that for anyone who's serious about competing has to move overseas, which is just the sad truth of it, or has to have the yeah, if you want to make a living off of this and you legitimately think you're that good, you need to move overseas, and you're going to have what, like a year or two worth of money to fall back on, because you're going to have to spend all your time playing when you're over there. No one's going to pay you. Or you have to have the sponsors and the funds to fly you backwards and forwards. That's if you want to compete and play. For me, for my job, I got a lucky break. I have a British passport. So before Brexit came into play, I can still pretty much travel wherever I am, but now I need to watch those days. But I was lucky that they didn't have to worry about the visa issues that come with a South African passport. Yeah. So some people saw me overseas, they started flying me out for work, and that was great. So I fly backwards and forwards. But again, I always feel terrible saying it when I meet South Africans who want to do my line of work. I'm always like, what passport do you have? If you have that green number, best you go spend a considerable amount of money to get the necessary visas so that you can be able to travel at a moment's notice, because it's a freelance job. So they'll phone you the week before and you're going to be able to pack up and go. They'll avoid phoning you if they know, you have to get visas. And I've got colleagues who are now based overseas who are South Africans who either live in like Berlin or they live in London, and they've had to go through quite a few struggles to get the necessary permits to travel around for work as well, because sometimes they have to leave London and go to Germany and things like that. So those are some of the things that I think hold South Africa back. It's probably not the response you wanted. I mean, everyone wants me to talk about how great South Africans doing in esports, and they are. They have players that are competing with the best in the world, but those players have moved overseas, unfortunately. That's just the nature of it.
The purpose of these discussions is to be as real as possible. You don't want to create a false sense of hope, because in a way, I can still hear my dad's voice in the back of my head. Yeah, well, you can't make a job out of that. For most people, that is true. You will not make a living out of playing games. You're going to have to be really talented in it. I happen to know a lady at work whose son makes a fortune on YouTube just playing games, but not everyone will make it that way. But I don't know about over in South Africa at the moment, because I've been out of the country for 10 years, but I work in education over here as an IT manager, and things that our education system in Australia deal with quite a lot is school. I think it's called school abandonment by students, where they just have, and I think COVID and lockdown had a lot to do with it, because down here in Victoria, we had a 9-month lockdown where we weren't allowed to move away from our house within 5 kilometer, whatever. And it was crazy. But the result of that, a lot of our younger people, they just don't want to go to school. They're not interested. They've got all these anxiety issues. And I've recently came back from EduTech, which is the biggest tech expo in the Southern Hemisphere, is was here in Melbourne for the last year now. It's going to be in Sydney next year. And one of the workshops I sat in was gamification in order to encourage students to get back in school. And the stuff that came out of that conversation was so interesting. What sort of issues does the South African schooling system struggle with at the moment, especially as a result, according to COVID, after COVID, if you know? And do you think gamification in schools would make a difference?
So I think that there are quite a few schools that are adding gamification. They've got esports, that they've added a lot of that to the mix. The problem is it's mostly private schools. So there is, again, like this, and this is my biggest thing with gaming in general, not just esports in the country, is that like it's great that I mean there's places that have opened full on esports academies that are offering it as because they believe and adding gaming into the curriculum because there's very educational games, and like you said, gamifying the normal curriculum as well via the PC systems that these kids have access to. They're all online, so a lot of it moves online, and it's great. Like I think it's fantastic, and you see them building these like mini games because it helps kids get more engaged in school. But again, you have to have access to the technology, right? And I think in South Africa, it's great if you are going, and we're speaking to expats, so I presume they know, like, it's great if you go to a private school, but if you don't have access to that, right? So we're getting this situation where some are going ahead and some are falling behind. And I also think that the media in South Africa is playing, you mentioned that role of like not wanting to go to school. The amount of times I read these articles about esports in this country where they're like, oh my God, this player made 3 million rand playing games. Like, you can do it too. And I'm like, no, that player is living in the States, has been for the last 6 years. If you speak to them, the 3 million rand that you've put there is prize money, but like a percentage of that has to go to the organization that they represent. They don't get all of that. Also, they play on a team of 4 other people, so everyone gets their share of the prize money. And when you start narrowing it down, that person maybe made far less than that over the course of 5 years living in America, which means they made hardly anything. But there's a misleading nature to the media in encouraging kids to quit school and just go play games for a living. And I think I always try and liken it to real sports where I'm like, do you encourage kids to quit school and go play rugby?
Yeah.
Just because they kick a rugby ball around the backyard? No, you tell them that they have to go to university and they have to do all this other stuff if they want to play in these big rugby teams. And we kind of need the same thing. So I don't know if I answered your question. I actually just went off on a complete tangent there, and a little bit of a ranty rant.
No, you did really
Yeah,
well.
but I mean,
Actually scratched open another topic. I'll maybe touch on that a bit. But basically, what I'm learning is that yes, if it's a private school, gamification is something that could work if they set aside a budget for it. I'm very familiar with working with budgets, and a project like that would probably be between 3 and 5 years to get off the ground. I just launched a VR center in our school. So we purchased a whole bunch of VRs. I had an outside company come into on Unity to build the software we need in order to
that's
get
so cool.
educational stuff into schools. Like with our students, they can sit and watch open heart surgery. It's not real; it's animated. Don't worry, but it's by wearing a virtual reality headset. We've got a simulation where they can cook. It's a whole kitchen. You can literally go around there and put stuff in the microwave and flip eggs. But it took years to get off the ground, and it cost a lot of money. It cost a lot of money. So I don't see how that will come easily to government-funded schools.
Not at all. I mean, at this point in time, they're fighting about what, like, just getting textbooks into the hands of
Oh,
certain kids, right? Or toilets and stuff. So I think that there are government schools, like some of the more elite government schools that are bringing in more of these ideas and trying to encourage that. But I think, again, it comes back to what I said. There is massive socioeconomic issues that South Africans have to address before they can go to the next level. And it bugs me because I think instead of addressing it, we're burying our heads in the sand. But that's a whole other can of worms.
it is. It is. And look, like I said, we need to keep it real. This is as real as it gets. And hopefully the right people will see this and make some waves down the line. Now, touching a bit on the same topic, not quite education, but more mental health focused in general. And I hate saying the word COVID the whole time, but it's just the other day. Now, you can easily go on with a conversation and not focus on that at all because mental health is pretty much a day-to-day issue with a lot of people. But what people went through because of the pandemic made things a lot harder, and we are only now seeing the repercussions, especially in the younger people, where they need an outlet. How do you reckon gaming and allowing them a bit more freedom in that space would help them heal if it does healing if it heals them at all, or does it do the opposite?
So I think it's a double-edged sword. And I think to answer your question, it does both. So I think gaming, so for someone like me, gaming was such a safe space during COVID. It was my only way of engaging with my friends. It was a cool way for me to just feel like I was still part of a community when we were very much isolated. Also, because I travel as much as I do for work, a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, I was in Ukraine doing a job, and I was there for 5 to 6 weeks at a time, and I'm away from everyone I know. I'm living in a flat, with my colleagues, and I go to work 3 times a day, 3 times a week, and the rest of the time I'm basically in this foreign country, don't speak the language. And gaming for me was such a cool way to just stay connected. At that particular moment, a game called Sea of Thieves came out, which was like a pirate game where you and your friends would be on a pirate ship and you'd go and collect treasure. And I used to play it with my then partner and my brother. So it would always be my boyfriend and my brother and I, and we would be on the ship, and then my one good friend would join us. And that for me was 2, 3 times a week was the only way that I really felt connected to home. So I think from a mental health point of view, gaming can be a savior in that sense. If you're feeling very lonely, if you're feeling very isolated, all of those things that COVID kind of, I think, put on people, if you're feeling dejected, gaming is a way of, one, feeling really good about yourself. If you're good in a competitive game, there is an endorphin rush that happens. And also it's a great way to connect with friends. On the other hand, it can also be a horrible way to completely isolate yourself from the world, right? It is ultimately an escape, and you can find yourself. I always use my brother as an example. He would hate me forever, but he's fine. He knows that I'm going to do it because I've done it before. When he was 18, he got very stuck into a game called World of Warcraft, which any gamer knows. But it became bad. He would wake up in the morning and pretend to go to university. He was living with my mom at the time. And he knew when she left for work, he would turn on and go home to start playing. And then he would play till 3, 4 in the morning. And it got to the point where my mother used to have to go into his room and be like, you need to go shower. Like every gaming stereotype on the planet existed. She used to switch the router off to try and cut the internet to get him off his PC. It was so bad. And if any of us disturbed him, he would go into he would just lose it and be screaming. And he completely isolated himself from the world. He failed all his university classes. A year later, he came out of his room one day, and that was it. He just never played World of Warcraft again. But if you speak to him, he'll tell you that it wasn't World of Warcraft that was the problem. He was going through some massive mental stuff. He was feeling very depressed. He was going through his own struggles. And I think young men don't feel that they can talk about it. True. And his way of dealing with it was to simply just completely bury himself in this game.
True.
And that's what gaming can.
No, sorry, you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's where the danger of gaming is. You can completely lose yourself, and remove yourself from reality should you choose, and then it's not a good thing, right? So it is a double-edged sword, and I think that's where there's a fine line. You read a lot of things about a gaming addiction. I would argue, if you feel like someone you know or your child has a gaming addiction, you need to take a closer look, because I don't think it's the game. I've always said this. I don't think it's the game that's the addiction. I think you need to see what it is they're trying to escape from, because 9 times out of 10, that's what's happening, is they're moving away from something else.
I totally agree. Now, what you just shared is sort of pushing me in one direction, because I struggled a little bit, probably not as much as your brother, but when we moved to the UK, it was quite a culture shock for me. Now, I lived in Strand and Gordons Bay. For me, that was paradise. Always told my wife, I'll never go anywhere. We didn't even go anywhere for holidays, because we felt like we were on holiday all the time. That's how amazing it is to live there. And the next thing I know, I'm getting off a plane at Heathrow Airport. I'm now need to start looking for work. Now, I ran my own web development business in South Africa, did fairly well, sold it, moved to the UK, and then I thought, well, I'll just do it again. Wasn't that easy. It was hard. I barely got any work. I managed to get 1 or 2 cybersecurity gigs off websites that got hacked. So I would like scan the code and take out all the bad code. That's pretty much what I'd done. But it would pay me £200 at most for a job. And then the rest of the time I had nothing. I had a little boy, my son, and I would drop him off at childcare, and I would go back home, and I started playing Ark, which you probably know pretty well, Ark Survival Evolved.
Yep.
And I just fooled around a bit, loads of fun, obviously. And then I hooked up with a a guy that built this massive base in this game, and he said, "No, I can join my clan, and here's some dinosaurs and all this stuff." Now, the Ushia audience that is going to listen to this can think, "What on earth are they talking about?"
What are we talking about?
Imagine owning your own virtual T-Rex. It was awesome. It was amazing. But what happened was, for the next 4 months, it totally consumed my being. Where my wife would tell me at night, "Well, you need to come to bed." I'm like, "Oh, no, there's a war going on. They're going to raid us. They're going to raid us." And it drove me crazy. And what happened at the end of the day, we got raided pretty bad. And a massive server war broke out. If I think back on it, it was so epic. It was this whole world, this whole tiny world that runs on a server somewhere in the Netherlands, and no one knows about it. No one cares except us who were on this server. But in a way, we totally got wrecked. They just destroyed everything. But in a way, that released me. And when I look at it back, if I look back at it now, that was my escape. Because I totally got depressed. It was cold, it was wet, it was miserable. If I have to use a mediocre example of blaming the weather, um, I managed to find a good job afterwards. But in the time where I was waiting, that was my escape. But have I not found a way out, or someone found a way out for me, it might have gone a different route. Because I've heard of parents struggling with their kids where they have to send them for therapy because they just cannot let go of a game.
That is, I mean, that's a very real thing. I'm going to be in trouble for this, but I sometimes blame the parents because this is my fun. This is the most common this is the most common conversation I have with parents when they find out what I do for a living. Is my child is addicted to Fortnite, and it's always Fortnite. And I go, okay, cool. What do you mean addicted? No, they just never stop playing it. They're on it all the time. Okay, so I grew up playing games with my dad. He always said us play. My brother played competitive Dota. I now work in the industry. We were always told games were on the weekend and we had a limited time that we were allowed to play them. So my first thing is, why haven't you set a limited time? No, well, they say that they have to play this and they start speaking. And the more they speak, I eventually stop them. I'm like, do you even know what this game is about? Because that's also my favorite. I'll say, how old is this child that is addicted to Fortnite? No, 6 years old. Do you know what the game is about? I've so many times, 6, 7, 8, they're addicted. Do you know what the game is about? Oh, it's this, it's just they run around with their friends in fun outfits. And I'm like, okay, let me explain what Fortnite is actually about. Because Fortnite is a game where your child is dropping onto an island with 100 other children, running around picking up guns, and the person who shoots everyone and kills them and is the last person standing wins. And sometimes there's some building and they have some cool dance. And the moment I say that, I see this look of shock. And I'm like, so you have no cooking clue what your child's been playing. You have no idea. And also the reason your kid is getting upset, I mean, this is another thing where I then have to explain the concept of, obviously, like there's different, like different tiers, and there's certain, if you get in every day, you get points, and they want to get certain things so that they can get skins, and you have to start explaining all of these sort of things to parents. And I think my issue is, as a parent, all the games we played growing up, my father was very involved in. So he was obviously a gamer, which helped, but like he knew what we were playing. He let us play some things we shouldn't. I remember being very young and playing Doom. Shouldn't have been allowed to do that, but whatever. But the games that we played, he knew. He knew what we were playing. And when we were allowed access to the internet, which I'm giving away my age now, but the internet wasn't. We sort of got access when we were like 12, 13, and I wouldn't have. No one really knew anything about the internet, and he let us run rampant on that. But I think for the most part, like, he was very involved in what we were doing on the computer at all times. And I think parents need to be a little bit more involved in what their kids are playing. I know it's confusing. I know it's weird. I know some of the games they play are, Minecraft is insanely weird, but and Roblox, but it's important for you to know what they're playing. Because if you do, the first thing is you'll understand why there is a desperate need for them to log in every day. Because that is something, like, it makes sense. But also too, if you're playing the game with them, you kind of have you don't have to play it, but if you understand what the game is about, one, you'll make better decisions about what your children are playing. And two, there's less of a chance of them getting addicted, because I think I think the concept of addiction as well is if you're using the video game as a babysitter. And obviously I'm a fantastic parent because I have no children, so I can lecture everyone on this. But I'm like, I think like playing games shouldn't be a you go play that game so that I have some me time. I think that that should be something you do with your kids, so you understand what they're doing, and it becomes like a family thing. So I always worry when parents say to me, my kid is addicted, I start asking some really tough questions about the games. And it very often comes out that they actually have no idea what their child is doing on a console or a PC. And I don't think you should let, a 6, 7, 8-year-old run rampant on an online game. And they don't even realize sometimes that their kids are online talking to strangers. So it's all of those things that I think it goes both ways. Don't get me wrong. I think gaming addiction very much exists.
Yeah, no.
But again, you got to be a little bit more hands-on and figure out what it is your kids are doing on their devices, I guess.
I absolutely love your cutthroat approach towards it because, and yes, there's a couple of guilty feelings coming through me. Now, just in my defense.
But again, I don't have kids. To be fair, I don't have kids. So it's very easy for me to sit here and tell everyone how to raise their children, right?
Just like your dad, we pretty much only allow gaming on the weekend, except school holidays. We loosen that rope a bit, and they can play. Yeah, because of that rule, my son seems to be skipping through games. He would get really fixated on one game. At the moment, it's Fall Guys, which I think is a really fun game. I watch him play it.
Oh, it is so much fun.
Yeah, I don't play it myself, but then for short periods, it'll be a little bit of Need for Speed. Not all of them, one of the certain games, and then one or two of the Star Wars games, which is probably leaning towards the more violent sort of games. He's 11, so I keep a close eye on that. If it gets out of hand, we've taken games. Believe it or not, we've taken Jurassic Park. I think was it where you build your own theme park with the dinosaurs. Something like that.
Yes.
The dinosaur part or whatever, because he kept building
It's
his
Jurassic World, and then if you do it right, the raptors escape and eat everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be the only mission he had. He wanted the dinosaurs to eat the people. We're like, no, you're doing
Which
this.
just goes against the entire. I was going to say that goes against the format of the game is to try and keep the park running safely to make money. But I feel like every single one of us who play it want the whole park to collapse so that the dinosaurs get out and kill all the people, which speaks a lot to society in general, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, he's now in Fall Guys. My daughter, she's 7. She just loves playing Minecraft in creative. I kept it signed out of Microsoft, so she's not playing online. And I think we're doing a good job in keeping that. We're managing it. And then at times my son and I will play a little bit of Rocket League together or whatever. But I think, look, not the perfect example, because yes, we at times, I'm sorry, the game will be the babysitter, not hours on end, for an hour, and so I can do the dishes and make dinner or whatever. But I think a lot of parents watching this can learn from it and maybe help us improve on it, where we can maybe do better ourselves. And maybe, one day when you've got your own kids, you can look back on this for a little bit of advice.
I bet you they'll be super addicted to games, and I'll be tearing my hair out and not understanding why this has happened and thinking I spent all this time lecturing everyone and now look where we are.
I'm at this stage now where I really want to play a bit of Counter-Strike at night. My wife, she's a bit of a gamer as well, funny enough. She's the more serious one of us too, but she'll play Sims, which she really enjoys, and she make this amazing stuff inside the game. By the time I get my turn to play, I just want to go to bed. Just go. Yeah, but look, we've got 2 topics left, but I'm going to combine those into one because they pretty much touch on the same sort of thing. What advice would you give aspiring gamers, especially if they realize they've got a bit of talent playing something? How can they start setting a bit of foundation and getting proper sponsorship and even build a business from gaming?
So I think if you feel that you're talented enough that you want to be competitive, there is so many online resources that you can utilize and get access to for free. YouTube, first place, where you can watch so many tutorials. You mentioned it earlier with like playing CS and Counter-Strike, and how when you're in a team, they talk about like specific strategies and learning how to throw nades and things like that, which sound absurd. But I think when we talk about professional players, these are not guys that just sit for 8 hours playing the same way you or I play. They're not just jumping into like random matchmaking. They are they do so many different things. A lot of their time is spent sitting around as a team, coming up with strats, going in, practicing those strats. Like they're not just randomly playing for fun, you know, like there is sometimes they'll go play a scrim with another team and they will do during that time is practice new strategies that they've come up with. So there's a lot more thought that goes into it than I think people realize. So my first bit of advice would be like, go and find all of those tutorials, start watching pro players in the game that you want to play. A lot of them have YouTube channels where they talk about a lot of this stuff. Like get an understanding for what it takes, and then obviously find like-minded individuals, other players that also want to take it seriously, because there's nothing worse than you want to turn this into a career, you want to be taken seriously, but your friends are just memeing and having a good time, right? So you need to find people that are in a very similar position to you, and then you need to start competing and you need to start getting good. That's if you want to play professionally. If you want to create content around gaming, or you want to do something that I do, then it's, again, lots of free resources, but it is being super serious about what are my downfalls, what are the things I'm not good at, how do I improve, and then reaching out to people for help. So like for me, I was very lucky early on. I got some great assistance from people overseas. They weren't very nice. I mean, the assistance they gave me was pretty much, you suck, get better, but they helped me get better. So you need to come in with a little less, like everyone thinks they're the greatest when they start, right? So you need a little less ego. But again, so many free resources online. And I think that's something that we take for granted is how much access to information we now have. If I think back to my parents' generation, where like your career meant you had to, you know, you either were studying a trade or you were going to university and information was in a library, whereas now you can go on the internet and learn almost anything. So take advantage of that, and don't fall for anyone who says you have to pay for anything. You don't have to. You can get it for free. And then it's just about hard work and time. And unfortunately, there is a lucky break contingent that comes with it. I think some of the best players in the world we might never have seen because they just didn't get that lucky break. So there is a little bit of luck that comes into it as well, much like in any professional sport, to be honest. It's the best way. I wouldn't say esports is a sport in the traditional sense, but I do think that a lot of the characteristics of traditional competitive sport fall into the same category.
It takes skill. It takes skill. I'm always better on my second game in the evening. First game, bad. Oh, it sucks. And I always tell the
Because
guys,
you got to warm up.
I always, when I log in, there's like a bunch of Kiwis and Aussies. I'm like, listen here, guys, it's the first game of the evening. I'm very sorry you're stuck with me. But it's all good fun. Everyone having a laugh. And I honestly enjoy the community I get out of it. I enjoy having fun, meeting all these new people and just, yeah, having a bit of banter. It's loads of fun. And I do hope for the most part that those South Africans my age and younger that's living overseas are getting the same joy out of it than I do. Tekel, thank you so much for your time. Was there any outgoing thoughts or what you want to leave with us before we end this call?
I mean, I think that I just wanted to touch on what you said because I forgot to put that in. You should probably have fun. So if you want to be like a professional gamer, like you should probably enjoy it as well. You're 100% right. Like I love my job. It's very stressful. I spend more time living out of a suitcase than I do. Like I was joking with you before we came on, I'm moving. So this is all empty. But the irony is I'm working a broadcast from this empty room, and the whole house has to move at the same time. And then we'll technically be out of here on the 1st of October. And on the 1st of October, I fly to another country. So like I'm moving everything to another house that I'm not even going to stay in. So like those sort of things are insanely crazy. But when I take a step back, I just love what I do and it's so much fun. And I think that's probably like the key takeaway is like gaming's meant to be fun. So even if you want to turn it into your job, make sure, actually in anything, it's not even gaming, right? Just make sure you're having fun because life's a little bit too short not to be having a good time most of the time, right?
Life's serious enough on its own. That doesn't mean everyone needs to be as well. And have fun while playing games because it's all in the name, game. It's fun.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to get this out there. And for those watching, please go check out Tech Girl's channel. You're on YouTube, obviously, is where I found you. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those stuff.
Pretty much everything. YouTube is very serious Counter-Strike. So if you don't follow competitive Counter-Strike, it might be a bit confusing. However, from next week, I'm going to start doing like weekly vlogs to try and make it a bit more accessible to people. But otherwise, you can find me TechGirlZA pretty much on every other social media platform. I would say Twitter is a bit more Counter-Strike as well, but Instagram and TikTok is a bit more about just games in general, if that's more your vibe.
All right. I will put all those links in the description and I'll make sure people see it everywhere. Thank you so much for your time and yeah, good luck with your move.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.